Story 1. The door that was always unlocked. I used to think the safest place in the world was my own house. It was a small 2-bedroom rental in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. Nothing special. The kind of place where you knew most of the people on your street, but not well enough to actually visit each other. I lived there alone. I worked from home most days, so my routine was pretty predictable. I'd wake up around 7, make coffee, sit at my desk, and work until late afternoon. The house was old, but it was comfortable, and as far as I knew, completely secure. The front door had a deadbolt. The back door had a chain lock. I also had a small motion light above the garage. I wasn't paranoid, but I liked knowing that everything was locked. That's why the first time I noticed something strange, I didn't think much of it. It was a Tuesday morning. I came downstairs, made coffee, and walked into the kitchen. The back door was unlocked. I remember standing there for a few seconds, staring at it. I always locked that door before going to bed, always. But I figured I'd simply forgotten. Maybe I'd taken the trash out late the night before and left it unlocked. That was the explanation I gave myself. So I locked it again. And that was it. Until 2 days later. Same thing. The back door was unlocked. This time, I was almost certain I'd locked it. I remember actually checking it before going upstairs. I had pulled on the handle twice. Locked. But again, I told myself I must have been mistaken. I started paying more attention after that, and that's when I noticed the little things. A kitchen cabinet I'd left closed would be slightly open. A chair in the dining room wouldn't be exactly where I'd left it. One morning I found the bathroom light on. None of these things were scary by themselves. They were just annoying. I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was becoming forgetful. Then, one Friday morning, I noticed something that bothered me. My bedroom window was open, just a few inches. I knew I hadn't opened it. I always slept with the windows closed. It was cold outside and I had no reason to open one. I stood there looking at it, and for the first time, I felt that uncomfortable sensation you get when something doesn't make sense. I checked the entire house. Nothing. No one was there. There were no signs of a break-in. So I closed the window and went to work. That night I started wondering if someone had been inside. But I quickly talked myself out of it. If someone had broken in, they'd have taken something. Nothing was missing. At least I thought nothing was missing. A week later, I came home from the grocery store. As I walked through the front door, I immediately noticed something. My living room curtains were open. I always kept them closed during the day because my computer was visible through the window. I walked closer. Then I noticed something else. The chair I'd left beside the window had been moved, only slightly, maybe a foot, but it was facing directly toward the street. I stood there staring at it, and suddenly, I didn't want to walk any further into the house. I checked every room, closets, bathroom, bedroom, nothing again. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That night, I called my sister and mentioned it. She laughed. Not in a mean way. She just said, "Maybe you're doing it in your sleep." I laughed too, and honestly, I felt better. Until the next morning. I woke up around 6. I heard something downstairs, a soft sound, like someone putting a glass down on a table. I froze. I listened. Nothing. Then I heard it again. A very quiet movement. I reached for my phone. I thought about calling the police. But then I told myself it was probably the refrigerator, or the pipes, or the house settling. I stayed in bed for almost 10 minutes. Then I slowly walked downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The back door was locked. Everything seemed normal. Except one thing. There was a wet footprint on the kitchen floor. Just one. Near the back door. I stared at it. It wasn't mine. I hadn't been outside. I didn't know what to do. I called the police. 2 officers came by and looked around. They didn't find anything. One of them told me it was possible someone had entered through the back door, but there were no signs of forced entry. That was the part that scared me, because if someone had entered, they hadn't needed to break anything. I changed the locks that afternoon. For the first time, I felt safe again, at least for a few days. Then one night, I was sitting in my bedroom watching TV. It was around midnight. I heard a noise. Not downstairs, not outside. Right outside my bedroom door. A soft movement. I turned off the TV. The hallway was dark. I stared at the gap beneath my door. Nothing. Then I heard breathing. Very quiet. Very close. I stopped moving. My entire body went cold. I was staring at the door, and suddenly I realized something. The door wasn't fully closed. There was a small gap. I hadn't left it open, I was certain. I reached for my phone before I could call anyone. The door moved, just slightly. I heard the floor creak. I didn't think. I jumped out of bed, grabbed the lamp beside me, and slammed my shoulder against the door. I pushed it shut. Something was on the other side. I could feel it. I screamed. Then I heard footsteps running down the hallway. I called the police. This time, they arrived quickly. They searched the entire house. Nothing. But then one officer noticed something in the attic access above the hallway. The panel wasn't properly closed. He climbed up. A few seconds later, he came back down. His expression had changed. He told me there was a sleeping bag up there, an old blanket, a half-empty bottle of water, and a small bag containing food. Someone had been hiding in my attic. The police searched the attic again. They found fingerprints. They also found a way into the attic from the outside. A loose section of roofing near the back of the house. The person had apparently been entering when I was away, and sometimes when I was home. The officer told me they believed the person had been watching me for at least several days, possibly longer. I moved out 2 weeks later. But even now, I think about the things I ignored. The unlocked door, the open window, the chair facing the street, the wet footprint, and the sound of breathing outside my bedroom. I still wonder how many times that person had been inside my house while I was sitting just a few feet away. Story 2. My daughter kept saying someone was upstairs. This happened when my daughter was 8 years old. At the time, we lived in a 2-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. My husband traveled a lot for work, so there were several nights when it was just me and my daughter. I never worried about it. We had lived there for years. We knew our neighbors. The doors were always locked. We had an alarm system. It felt safe. One night, my daughter and I were watching TV downstairs. It was around 9:30. She suddenly looked toward the staircase. Then she said, "Mom." I said, "Yeah?" She pointed upstairs. "Did Dad come home?" I laughed. I told her no. She stared at the stairs. Then she said something that I didn't like. I thought I heard him walking. I told her it was probably the house. She didn't look convinced, but she went back to watching TV. About 20 minutes later, she asked me if I could check upstairs. I remember laughing. I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I think someone is there." That got my attention. I asked her why she thought that. She just shrugged. "I don't know. I checked. Nothing. Every room was empty. I came back downstairs and told her. She seemed relieved. I didn't think about it again. The next morning, I found the upstairs bathroom door open. I always kept it closed. I assumed my daughter had left it that way. Then, a few days later, I noticed something strange. My bedroom closet door was open. Again, I didn't think much of it, but my daughter did. She asked me why I'd left it open. I told her I hadn't. She looked at me, then she said, "Maybe the person upstairs did." I remember feeling a chill. I told her there was no person upstairs. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Over the next week, she mentioned it several times. She'd say things like, "I heard someone," or "Why is the hallway light on?" or "Mom, did you go upstairs?" Every time I checked, nothing. I started thinking maybe she was imagining things. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I was cleaning the kitchen. My daughter was playing in her room upstairs. Suddenly, she screamed. Not a normal scream, a terrified scream. I dropped what I was holding and ran upstairs. She was standing in the hallway. Her bedroom door was open. She was crying. I asked her what happened. She pointed toward the end of the hallway. Someone was standing there. My heart started pounding. I asked her what she meant. She said she'd been sitting on her bed when she saw a man standing near the stairs. She said he looked at her. Then he disappeared. I immediately checked the entire house. Nothing. I called my husband. He told me to call the police. I did. The officers searched the house. They found nothing. But one officer noticed something. A small window in the upstairs bathroom was unlocked. It was high enough that I didn't think anyone could reach it from outside. But apparently they could. The officer told me to get the locks changed. We did. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 nights later, I woke up to my daughter standing beside my bed. She was shaking. I asked her what was wrong. She whispered, "He's upstairs." I sat up. "What?" She pointed toward the hallway. "He's upstairs." I grabbed my phone. I told her to stay behind me. We walked out of the bedroom. The hallway was completely dark. I turned on the light. Nothing. I checked the stairs. Nothing. Then I heard something. A floorboard creaked upstairs. My daughter grabbed my arm. We were both completely still. I called the police. This time I didn't go upstairs. We locked ourselves in my bedroom. I pushed a dresser against the door. Then we waited. A few minutes later, we heard something. Footsteps. Slow, coming down the stairs. I held my daughter against me. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard the sound of someone walking across the hallway, right outside my bedroom. I couldn't breathe. The police arrived. I heard them shouting, then running. Then someone yelled for the person to stop. A few seconds later, everything went quiet. The police had caught him. He had been hiding inside the house. They found him in the attic. The same attic I'd never checked. He'd been entering through the bathroom window. He'd been sleeping there. The police found food wrappers, bottles of water, and a blanket. They also found photographs, pictures of my daughter, taken from outside the house. I still can't talk about that part without feeling sick. The man had been watching us for weeks. My daughter had been right. Someone really had been upstairs. And the worst part? She had seen him before I did. I moved out almost immediately. For months afterward, my daughter refused to sleep alone. I couldn't blame her. Sometimes I still think about that first night when she asked me if I'd heard someone walking upstairs. I told her it was nothing. I told her the house was making noises. I told her there was nobody there. But there was. And if I'd listened to her the first time, maybe we would have realized it much sooner. Story 3. The house wasn't empty when I came home. I was 23 when this happened. I had just moved into my first house. It was small, old, and honestly kind of cheap. But it was mine. I lived alone, and I loved the freedom. My job required me to travel occasionally, usually just for a day or two. The first time I noticed something strange, I had just returned from a weekend trip. I walked through the front door. Everything looked normal, except my bedroom closet was open. I always kept it closed. But I didn't think much of it. I unpacked, went to bed. The next morning, I noticed something else. A kitchen drawer was open. Again, I ignored it. Then, I noticed one of my mugs was missing. I thought I'd left it at work. A few days later, it appeared in the sink. I remember thinking, that's weird, but not scary. I figured I'd simply forgotten. Then things started disappearing. A phone charger, a pair of scissors, a flashlight, and once, my car keys. I spent 20 minutes searching for them. Eventually, I found them inside my bedroom closet. I knew I hadn't put them there. But I didn't want to think about what that meant. I started becoming more careful. I locked the doors, I checked the windows, I took pictures of rooms before leaving the house, just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things. And then I went away for work again. This time I was gone for 3 days. When I came home, my bed was made. I never make my bed, not once. I stood in the bedroom doorway. I remember feeling completely confused. Then I noticed something. The blanket had a small crease in it, like someone had been lying there. I checked the entire house. Nothing. I called the police. They searched the property. No one was there. The officer told me there were no obvious signs of forced entry, but he suggested I install cameras. So I did. I placed one camera facing the front door, one facing the backyard, and one in the hallway. For the first few days, nothing happened. Then one night, I got an alert. Motion detected. I opened the camera app. It was the hallway camera. I watched the recording. At first, I saw nothing. Then, a shadow moved across the hallway. I replayed it. Nothing. I thought maybe it was a bug or a car passing outside. I ignored it. The next night, it happened again. Same time, around 2:17 a.m. This time, I watched the entire recording. There was no one visible, just a shadow. I started sleeping with my bedroom door locked. Then one night, I woke up. I heard a sound, a very quiet sound. Someone was moving around downstairs. I reached for my phone. I checked the camera. The hallway was empty. Then I heard it again. A cabinet opening. I called the police. I whispered my address. Then I waited. The sound stopped. A few minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the house. Nothing. But one officer noticed something. The basement door was slightly open. I never used my basement. It was mostly storage. He opened it. Nothing. I was starting to feel stupid. I thought maybe I was imagining everything. Until the next morning, I found a note. It was on my kitchen counter. 3 words. You left early. I stared at it. I had no idea what it meant. But I knew one thing. Someone had been inside my house. I called the police again. They came back. This time they searched everything. Closets, basement, attic, crawl spaces. Nothing. I decided to stay with a friend. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the note. You left early. What did that mean? Then it hit me. The person who wrote it knew I had left the house. They knew when I was supposed to come home, which meant they were watching me. The next day I went back with the police. We checked the cameras, and that's when we noticed something. The hallway camera had a blind spot, a small area near the basement door. Someone could stand there without being seen. And suddenly all those shadows made sense. The police searched the basement again. This time they found something: a blanket, food, water, and a small plastic bag containing some of my missing belongings. My charger, my flashlight, the scissors. The person had been living in my basement, not every night, but often. The police believed he'd been entering through a small basement window, and the worst part was, he'd probably been inside while I was home. That night, I went back to collect my things. I was with 2 officers. We were standing in the living room when one of them suddenly stopped. He looked toward the hallway. I heard it too, a noise, a soft creak from the basement door. The officer immediately moved toward it. He opened the door. Nothing. Then he looked down. There was a footprint in the dust. Fresh. The police searched the basement again. This time they found a hidden space behind some boxes, and inside there was a sleeping bag. Someone had been there recently. Very recently. I moved out that week. I never found out exactly who had been inside my house. The police believed it was someone who had been watching the property, someone who knew my schedule, someone who knew when I was gone. But I still think about the nights I spent there watching television, making dinner, sleeping, thinking I was alone. I wasn't. And that's the part that stays with me, not the missing charger, not the unlocked doors, not even the note. It's the thought that someone could be standing just a few rooms away, while you have absolutely no idea they're there. Because when you live alone, you assume silence means you're safe. You assume an empty room is actually empty, and sometimes you don't realize how wrong you are until it's already too late. What if I'd opened that basement door myself? What if I'd gone downstairs alone? What if the person had decided to come upstairs instead of staying hidden? I don't know what would have happened, and honestly, I don't want to know, because to this day, whenever I walk into a quiet room, I still find myself looking twice, just to make sure I'm actually alone.